We have heard the readings, and there are some key phrases that I want us to reflect on this evening. The first reading is from the book of the prophets, Zephaniah, and it was from chapter 3, from verse 14 to 18. And again, the responsorial psalm says, "Cry out with joy and gladness, for among you is the Holy One of Israel." And the second reading is from Ephesians chapter 4, from verse 4 to 7. Now, if you look at these readings, you will hear the phrases like, "We should rejoice," "We should shout for joy," "We should be happy that our victory has come," that we should dance for joy, that we shall be set free from prison, that our sentence will be reappealed. And the list of all these phrases goes on. But when we check these things against reality, the opposite is the case. The opposite is the case. And I was wondering, how can I tell people to sing and shout for joy when those who are sick are still sick? How will they be able to shout for joy? How do I tell those who are poor to shout for joy, to sing and dance when they are still poor? How do I tell those who are mourning to shout for joy when they've lost someone so close to them? Is it the homeless? How do I tell them to shout for joy when they are homeless? Is it the depressed? How do I tell them to shout for joy? Those who are suffering, how do I tell them to shout for joy? People who are lonely, those who are lonely, how do I tell them to shout for joy? Those who are troubled, how do I tell them to shout for joy? Those who are in debt, how do I tell them to shout for joy? To the frustrated, how do I tell them to shout for joy? There are people who are in marriages and relationships that are not working well and they are frustrated. How do I tell them to shout for joy? There are people who are needy, those who need help. And the list of so many troubles we go through can't be exhausted. How do I tell you to shout for joy? When I look at all these things, it becomes so difficult for me at first glance at this reading to say you should shout for joy. Because the problems we go through still stare at us. If I decide to be motivational and then trying to motivate you, when you step out of this church, the problem again will hit you, and then you will lose your motivation. By the way, this is not even the first Christmas we are experiencing. So what makes this Christmas so different that we should shout for joy? Some of the things we are going through have even seen a Christmas before this one approaching. So, and the problem or what we are going through is still there. So why should we shout for joy? After all, Jesus won't be born again physically. Why should we shout for joy? Rejoicing and shouting for joy is something emotional, and you don't have to force it. It comes naturally. If you are truly happy because of something, nobody needs to tell you to shout for joy before you begin to shout for joy and dance. You don't force it. So how do I even tell people to shout for joy? But at a closer look, something changed. When he says, shout for joy, he is not necessarily saying or commanding us to manifest emotional excitement. He is not commanding us to express some emotional feelings and be jumping up and down. The shouting for joy is not emotion-based, is not feeling-based, it is hope-based. I repeat, the shouting for joy is not emotion-based, it is not feeling-based, it is hope-based. The shouting for joy actually means that we should strengthen our hope in Him. We should strengthen our hope in Jesus. Let me explain. If you can hear my voice now saying to you, shout for joy, it means something, that you are alive. It means that you are alive, because if you are not alive, you will not be able to hear me saying, shout for joy. Now, if you are alive, it is because He has a plan for you and I. If you are alive, it is because He has a plan for you and I. A lot of us, we entered this year with a lot of people. Today, they are not alive. They have died. It is not because I am holier than those who have died or because you are holier than those who are alive. The reason He kept us up till now still alive is because He has a plan. If He has a plan for us, if He has a plan for me, if He has a plan for you, then we have hope. How? Hope comes into existence when there is a promise of a better future. Hope comes into existence when there is a promise of a better future. You may ask, has He really promised us anything? Has God really promised us anything? He has not promised us anything, but He has promised us everything. He has not promised us anything, but He has promised us everything. So, from the very first Sunday of Advent, the second Sunday of Advent, and now the third Sunday of Advent, the readings are packed, filled with promises. In Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 14, when he says, "The days are coming, it is the Lord who speaks, when I am going to fulfill the promises I have made to you." What else will He mean if not that there is a time for making promises and there is a time for fulfilling promises, and the coming of Jesus at nativity is the time for fulfilling promises. In Exodus chapter 14, verse 14, when He said, "The Lord will fight for you, you only just have to keep your calm," what else will He mean if not that He is guaranteeing us protection and victory? In Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, when He says, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. When they run, they will not be tired. When they walk, they will not faint." What else does He mean when He says this, if not He's assuring us of strength, of elevation, and that we will be unstoppable? In Isaiah again, chapter 43, verse 2, when He says, "When you go through water, I will be with you. When you go through the rivers, you will not be swept over by the river. When you pass through fire, you will not be burnt by the flames of this fire. What else does he mean? If not that he is aware of the terrible times we are going through. If not that he is aware that we are struggling with our weaknesses, and that he is assuring us that when he comes at Christmas, he will give us the strength to overcome our problems, to overcome our sins, that our sins and our troubles will not see the end of us, but we will see the end of all that has been putting us down. So when he says, shout for joy, what he means is, excite your hope. When he says, shout aloud, what he means is that manifest your hope through your actions. When he says that our sentences will be reappealed, what he means is that our sins that have so long condemned us, we will be able to overcome. When he says that he will drive our enemies away, what he means that he will give us the grace and the strength to conquer the agents that have led us to sin. When he says, fear no more, what does he mean? He's assuring us of grace and the strength to live a holy life. When he says, you do not have to worry anymore, but pray, he is assuring us that the hope he gives us is as real as when he fulfills his promise. So, I am saying to myself, I'm saying to you, rejoice, shout for joy, and dance, because he truly is coming and he will help us. God bless you.